Hello, beauty, and welcome to this podcast episode. After a little break, a little unplanned break actually from the podcast, I've just had a lot of stuff going on. This is the first podcast in a hot minute. And this is my first podcast that I'm actually recording from my new house that I've moved into in Bali. So when I arrived back to Bali at the start of the year, I needed to find a new place to move into, and somehow, magically, I have found the most, oh my God, just perfect, gorgeous place. It's just so perfect. I can't even tell you how perfect it is. The location, the place itself, the size of the place. I'm just so happy here. The privacy, the view. I have this most gorgeous view from basically every room in the house. And outside my window where I am in my office, I can see volcanoes, literally this volcano right outside my window. Oh my God, guys, it's ridiculous. If you don't follow me on Instagram, you might not have seen it. If you follow me on Instagram and you're listening to this, I don't know, some sort of within a year of me releasing it, you will have seen this place, but it's so gorgeous. I'm so grateful to have gotten it. And there's just been like a whole bunch of things happening. Basically, I went traveling after I first moved in to Thailand. I fractured my wrist. I've had all this sciatic pain. And then I've just really been setting things up for the house for me being long term. I'm not going to go on about it too long, but here we are recording my first podcast from this house. And I also, as I think I mentioned in my last episode, or last couple of episodes, I've also started filming at the same time I'm recording again so that these can be on YouTube. So if you prefer to watch or listen to podcasts on YouTube, all my podcasts are now going up onto YouTube, which is very exciting. And this is my first time actually recording it I've put my vlogging camera as the webcam for my computer. So let's see how this goes. Let's see how this works. And let's get into this episode. You know, I feel like I say this a lot. I've been dying to record some episodes for a little while. And so I have like written down in probably about 10 different places the next episodes I was going to record. And so I was searching before I started this. I was trying to find all of my, like, what was it that I wanted to record episodes on? Because I know I've written in a few different places, oh my God, I want to do a podcast on this. I want to do a podcast on this. I want to do a podcast on this. But I couldn't actually find any of it before I started. So what I've realized works really well for me right now in this season of the podcast, and I'm sort of doing the podcast a little bit differently to what I used to, is to just really tune into what's like really alive for me right now. What's a theme that's really landing for me, or that I'm really exploring, or that's just really alive in my world, in my Feminine Mystery School mastermind, and to just speak to that. So I just wrote down a couple. I'm going to record 2 episodes right now in this sitting. And one of the themes that has been really strong for me at the moment is, having awareness that there is a greater intelligence bringing things together, a greater intelligence at play that is just so far beyond what we can comprehend. And it's just absolutely not up to us to do it all. We can take on life that way. We can take on creating what we want in our lives, bringing about our goals. We can take it on as it's 100% up to us to do every single thing to bring into existence the things that we desire to bring into existence. And specifically for a lot of you guys listening, I know your business and bringing into existence like what it is you really want to contribute and share with the world, and the business as a vehicle for you doing that. We can take it all on as it's all on us. And then when we do that, we enter a very mechanical mode of operating where we go into control, we go into manipulation, we have to work hard, we have to push for everything, every single inch you're pushing for. And this sort of way at coming at life tends to lead to a lot of anxiety and stress and, feeling like you've never done enough, you always have to do more, you're behind, usually is going to come along with this. And then that causes burnout. It's not like how much you're doing that causes burnout. It's the psychological stress and anxiety from which you're doing it, where you feel like you have to control everything. Otherwise, it's not going to come together. And it's that stress of how you need to do things, how you need to be, how you need to figure it out. Otherwise, you're not going to be okay. That causes the burnout. So the reason this theme has been up for me coming into 2026, one of the things I recognize, I published my book at the end of last year, my first official published printed book in December, 13th of December. And I was then traveling afterwards, and I landed back in Bali at the start of the year. And I've actually just really been in this integration period from that. And actually, now that I'm saying that, that's something that I want to record an episode on. I know my last episode did speak to that, but now we're a few months on. I definitely do want to do an episode just dedicated to sharing my experience and my journey over the past few months, because also something I realized with this podcast, I think one of the things that's hard for me to, permanently take on in my mind, but one of the things that I think is most valuable for you guys listening is me just sharing how I navigate through things and what I'm doing and different things I come up against and how I meet them and how I deal with them and how I grow through them and how I expand through them. So I will do a podcast on that. But I released my book and I've been in this integration period. And so coming into the start of the year, it was a time where I just needed to receive, stop and receive for a hot minute. And this is part of the creative cycle. One of the toxic things about capitalism, I guess, what we really hold in our capitalistic society. I'm not saying I think capitalism is purely toxic. I don't. I did a university degree on not my degree, but I did a subject actually when I was on exchange in Sweden. I'm going to come back and tie all of these loops, don't you worry. That was the study of these different systems. And it's like, okay, capitalism absolutely has flaws and toxic traits, but it has been the best system so far that we've applied. And it definitely has some evolution to do, but I'm just saying that because I'm not 100% against capitalism, but capitalism as totally free markets and the way we generally operate capitalism definitely has some major drawbacks and negative implications. Negative, maybe implications, outcomes. So one of the things, though, that we sort of are really sucked into in our very capitalistic worldview is constant output, constant working, constant output, and constant growth. I do think that's a toxic thing of capitalism, or a thing that there needs to be other things in place, because this just doesn't really turn out that well, is this constant growth model, because capitalism is a constant growth model. And so we have this sort of internalized idea that we need to constantly be outputting and more and better and bigger results. And that's the way. And if we're ever not doing that, then something's wrong. And that's also what pushes people into overdrive and burnout, because that's not actually how creation works, right? We are a part of this universe. We are a part of nature. You are a part of nature. Again, actually, in our Western worldview and mentality, we don't actually necessarily really think of ourselves that way. We think of ourselves as these aliens that have invaded nature and just fucked it up. But we actually are a part of life, and we're a part of nature. We're a part of the universe. We're all one. We're all the universe experiencing itself, and we have an individual life experience. So we have this oneness and this wholeness with everything, and we have an individual life experience, and we are in an egoic vehicle as an individual where we do need to tend to and care for ourselves as individuals, but we're all just the universe experiencing itself. And and so we are part of nature. We are part of it all. We're, as much as a tree is, we are part of nature. And nature is a really wonderful teacher in terms of creation and the creative process and cycle. And so nature is not in a perpetual summer. No, nature is not in a perpetual fruiting. Like there's the cycles of deep winter, the seed, the hibernation, the like gathering of energy, and then the spring is starting to spring forth this creative energy, like the animals are mating, it's all going on. And then there's summer, which is the fruiting and the reaping of the harvest, what you've put out and watered and created is now fruiting. And then the autumn is the dying down, coming in for winter. This is the natural cycles. And we have, as I'm sure you would know, listening to this, we have this cycle as women. We have this cycle in our menstrual cycle. We have the egg coming out, there ripe for fertilization. And our ovulation is like full summer, and then we go into autumn, and then we go into winter. And, it's just a cycle. It's a natural cycle. It's just a natural energy cycle. Nothing is wrong about any part of that cycle. We don't go to nature, oh, no, you shouldn't do winter. I mean, actually, a lot of people kind of do. You shouldn't do winter. We should just cut that one out. Well, then spring won't happen and summer won't happen. Things get dysregulated and they get out of balance. And we chronically do this to ourselves in the Western modern day world, chronically, and have this idea that we always should be in this super high output mode. And that's just simply not the case. And it's depleting. It doesn't support your creativity, your creation, your creative cycles, supports you to just go into burnout at some point and burn the whole thing down. And we don't want that. So at the start of this year, at the end of last year, I just had a massive summer, like a massive fruiting of I wrote and published my book in the space of 3 months. I had a launch event for it. I finished my Eco Silk collection for Dare, the label, my clothing line or brand that I've started. I finished the Glass Pleasure collection and got my first batch made of them. I made an entire merch set that went with my book and the tote bag and the t-shirts, and I created all of these things and they all came out, and I had this launch event where I had all of them there. It was kind of funny. It was kind of funny. And I'd actually been doing all of these dance workshops leading up to it as well. And so at my launch event, I presented the silk collection, the merch collection, the book, and the Glass Pleasure collection, and I did a dance performance. It was kind of funny. It was kind of like the Alex show. It felt like a kid, coming out and be like, and I made this, and I made this. And anyway, it was a big time for me. And so it really was needed for me to have an autumn and winter after this, and to just gather my energy and, receive what I've created. And from there, and from that gathering, let that, the spark of inspiration of what's next to come through. So this is a process that I have been in the last few months. And the reason I'm saying all of that, prefacing this podcast with all of that, is, I really had this intention coming into the year of okay, I want to deepen even more into my understanding and embodiment of the feminine, and leaning into the feminine in my creative process and my creative cycle. And when I talk about the feminine, I'm always talking about the feminine principle. In creation, in the universe, in life, there is a feminine principle and a masculine principle, the yin and yang. I'm not talking about gender or any superficial ideas of what women do or what men do. I'm talking about the feminine principle. And, we as women have both feminine and masculine energy, and we need to create with the masculine and feminine. And my hypothesis is that women predominantly have let's say more feminine energy than men, and men predominantly have more masculine energy than women. And then it just sort of, having that understanding or framework just sort of lends itself to kind of being able to look at it with this lens of okay, as a woman, if I become dysregulated and out of alignment and not in my flow, if I try to create without the feminine, without using the feminine principle, and I just create from my masculine. And it's not that I shouldn't use my masculine at all in creating. I have a very strong masculine energy. I would say anyone would say that about me. But I will be in harmony when I really utilize and lean in to my feminine nature, and I use that. And that's the one that we're all wounded against, seeing as invalid, inviable, not weak, unintelligent, lesser, right? And it's something that obviously I've done a lot of work in reconnecting myself with my intuition, my sensuality, my femininity, and being able to create with receptivity and not just as a bulldozer, because the feminine is receptive, is receiving. And so I hypothesize women have a greater kind of feminine nature. And so we need to really embrace the feminine just to a greater degree in how we create. And that's how we experience our highest vitality, flow, self-actualization, and, manifestation of our purpose and potential in the world. And so my intention coming into the year, and especially coming out of that just very explosive fruiting phase, let's say summer, I had this intention. I want to deepen in my relationship to the feminine even more, lean into it even more, and really explore this edge even more of how much more I can create with receptivity, or how much can I lean into the receptivity and the receiving, and not go into kind of overpowering with my doing and with my masculine. Absolutely not trying to get rid of my, masculine, using masculine energy to create at all, but how much more can I embrace the feminine, and what's the result of that going to be? So that was really an intention for me coming into this year. And then I went to Thailand to do acro for 2 weeks with a base whom I adore doing acro with, and was going to be in Thailand for a while, and had, this time where I could go over and train with him. So I went over to Thailand to do acro, and I fractured my wrist. And honestly, guys, it's been awesome. It's been awesome for many reasons. Which brings me to another thing. So you're getting 5 podcasts in one to get to this topic. But actually, just side note for any of you guys that run trainings and put together, offerings or write books or whatever, something that I teach in my Feminine Mystery School, one of the things, and this particularly is something that I learned from my mentor, William Whitecloud. That's another episode I wanted to do. I've just finished up with my work with William for now. I've worked with William quite, closely, I guess, for about 6 years, and the last 3.5 in one-to-one coaching with William. And I also just finished up another container that I did with a woman for 6 months. And I want to do a podcast episode on that and my decision making around it and what I got from those things. Fuck, that's going to be such a juicy episode. But one of the things I learned from William is this transformational structure. And I'm not sure who he learned it from, but I know he learned it from someone. If I learn things directly from people, I really like to credit them, and because why not? And so this transformational structure is that whenever you're wanting to teach something of a transformational nature, you have one theme, not more than one theme, one theme. And when you cover one theme, you end up covering 100 things. But when you try to cover 100 things, you cover nothing. So that's what I'm just jumping out at me as I'm recording this podcast episode, because I feel like I am covering 100 themes as I am trying to just as I am delivering on this one theme, which is there is a greater intelligence that knows just way fucking more than you, and you get to utilize that. You don't actually have to know how everything's going to come together and figure it all out on your own, and you can't and you won't. But when you try to, then you have no help because you're not open and receptive. You're not actually creating with the feminine principle, with feminine nature. You are just bulldozing, disconnected from the feminine principle, and purely just like coming at it in a totally masculine way. So, blum 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 blum, covering lots of themes. We're covering lots of topics as I execute on this one theme. So you're welcome. I hope you're enjoying it. And not like, oh my God, Alex, shut up. Get to the point. If you are, this podcast is not for you. You will not enjoy any podcast episode I create if that's what you're thinking and feeling right now. So you best just turn this off, unfollow me, and just go about your merry way. But if you want the deep dive into all the different layers and levels and what's really going on and the context behind it and how this comes together and how this links to this and to this and to this, then you're in the right place. All right. So Thailand, fracturing my wrist, many, many amazing things that have come out of that. And, one thing that was just so in my awareness, once I didn't know actually immediately that I had a fractured wrist. I thought I just had a really sore wrist, and I kept training on it, unfortunately, and it was like, I'll rest it when I get home. I'm only in Thailand for 2 weeks. Got home, resting it, not getting any better in 2 weeks. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go get it checked. Found out it was fractured. And then what I was just so aware of with that, I was looking at my wrist and I was just like imagining the bone, it's called knitting together, the bone, like, knitting the new bone together and forming. And I was like, wow, I have no idea how this is happening. And I have no way to make that happen. This is just like an intelligence that my body holds that is responding to okay, now there's a fractured bone. Okay, we go in. And we go into, it just goes into doing this thing. And I have no idea how it's doing it. The only things I can do is support it with the right conditions that will support that process. So proper nutrition that's giving it the building blocks to create the bone and whatever the fuck else it's creating. I don't even know. I don't even know what it's doing. But I can support it with the proper nutrition. I can support it with rest and immobilizing it so that the joint isn't moving and then creating inflammation and irritation and disturbing that process. So I can do those things to support it. But my self-conscious awareness, I have an intelligence that is doing that. Literally, I just think you guys might have thought about this before, because sometimes people use the analogy of digestion. I'll use that next. But really, when you really think about it, you're like, fuck, I have no idea. No, if my greater intelligence, this intelligence wasn't doing this for me, the only thing I could do is you'd sticky tape or something, or splint it forever. If something inside me wasn't just doing the healing process itself, I would have no way to actually regrow that fucking bone. if there wasn't an intelligence in me that knew how to regrow the bone and was just doing it itself, right? And so it's doing it. There is a greater intelligence. There is a greater intelligence that we can't comprehend, that's constantly bringing things together. You might have heard me say this before, like, what we, in creating and the creative orientation, we use the principle that your greatness, like your higher intelligence knows, and it knows the way to your end results, and it knows the way to your highest good coming together, and it's constantly bringing it together. And are you receiving it and going with it and flowing with it, or are you bulldozing, not even hearing it, not receiving it, and just like turning the other way and fucking bulldozing your path? Because that's one way to live life. That is one way to live life. But that's a fucking painful, uncomfortable, like dysregulated, dissatisfying way to live life. But you can live life that way. You can get places that way. You can bulldoze your way through university and then bulldoze your way through a career. But fuck, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. It's going to be draining. You're going to feel completely unsupported because you are unsupported because you're not receiving the support that's actually there in life. And I'm sure you guys have all had the experience when you have let go of control. You've not tried to control things and you've just watched everything that you were like wanting, but not like in a death grip attached to, just come together. Just like, just bring itself together. And you're like, fuck, didn't even have to do anything. I remember when I got back to Bali one time, not when I first moved here, but when I came back after my first 4-month trip that I took to Europe, Africa, Australia, like what once I was living in Bali. And I remember I came back and like, I didn't know where I was going to live, and I also was like feeling quite on a budget coming back from that trip. So feeling like I can't, like some attachment to I just can't just go into like a super expensive Airbnb, because places in Canggu, I don't know what it's like right now because I don't live there anymore, but for a period of time were insanely expensive. Insane. And getting snapped up super quickly. But I decided, yep, I want to go back, and I want to go back to Canggu. And I just didn't try to control it. And then, it was like a month until, or less. I think it was like 2 weeks until I like had my flight back to Bali. And it turns out my friend, where she was living, there was like in this really gorgeous, like kind of luxe villa with it was sort of like a guest house, I guess, but like maybe like a high-end one that had just 4 rooms, and they were massive rooms with walk-in wardrobes, like massive bathrooms. And when I got back to Bali, I didn't want to live on my own again, but I also didn't want to go into random share housing. So getting to go and live with my friend here, where you had the 2 rooms on the top floor, was like perfect. And it just came together. It just happened. I didn't have to force it. And then I remember like I needed to get a phone SIM and something else, and like kind of being like, well, I can't do anything until I get those things. But I just didn't try to control it, or like, schedule and organize this. Not saying that's ever a bad thing, but I just left it open. And then my friend was there and took me to breakfast, and where we were going to breakfast there was a phone place along the way, so I could get my SIM, and just everything that I needed. I knew that I needed it, and I just hadn't gone into trying to like make those things happen yet, and they all just came together and effortlessly happened. And that's what you can tap into. And I'm sure you've had experiences of this, maybe more so, depending on what you're like with this kind of thing, maybe more so when you're on a holiday and you are literally less attached. Like so you let your controller let go, right? But we can create our entire lives like this. We can create our entire businesses like this. And having this happen with my wrist getting fractured, actually about, I guess, maybe like 5 or 6 weeks after maybe even less after I set this intention, I was just like, whoa, this is an illustration of that. That's not the only amazing thing that's coming out of my wrist being fractured, but this is like I could just look at my wrist and I'm literally like, this is knitting itself back together without me doing anything. And, it's the same for our digestion. It's the same for healing a wound. You don't know how to digest your food. You don't know how to get the valves, the sphincters or in your throat somewhere to open and close and let the food through and then pass through to your stomach. Like, you just need to support it with the conditions. You just, when you're going to eat, ideally relax so that the digestion can happen really naturally and you don't get indigestion because your body is contracted and not relaxed. So we support it with these things, but you don't know how to do any of that. And do you know what? And what I think actually is the best analogy for this, and this has been something that I've thought about for many years, and I keep meaning to share it because I feel like it's the best analogy. It's going to sound really funny, but it's the best analogy. It's taking a shit, okay? Because taking a shit is something that you do have conscious control over and that you can relax and let happen. So there are 2 ways to take a shit. I'm assuming you've discovered this too. I discovered this. I, as a hyper control person that really grew up thinking I had to like make everything happen and do it quickly and control, and it's just all on me. And if I don't do it, it don't happen. And so when I guess sort of habitually what I developed taking a shit was to push, get it out, like take a shit quickly, push, right? And so that would be how I would usually take shits. Now you know. And I remember realizing, I guess I must have experienced this before, but I remember at some point clocking, like, if I just sit there and relax and I don't push at all, it just comes out on its own. It just takes like a hot minute longer. Well, not necessarily, but most of the time. But if I just stop and relax, it just comes out on its own. And I actually discovered this through maybe first through having a laptop and the internet. So I don't know if you guys remember or if you were around. I'm sure a lot of you were around pre having smartphones, but you did have a laptop and Wi-Fi. That sort of in between period, like laptop and Wi-Fi, but no smartphone. And so taking your laptop to the toilet to take a shit so you could do some things on your laptop. And so I remember doing this and it just made me just end up sitting there for way longer than usual. Because usually I would just sit down, go, get up, and go again, right? And so I remember sitting there with my laptop doing whatever the fuck I was doing on my laptop. And after a while, just more shit coming out. Like I had chat, I thought I'd finished, but I was just still sitting there on my laptop doing whatever I was doing. And then just more coming and realizing, wow, if I just sit there for longer, actually more comes out. And just taking a shit the way I was taking a shit, it was always cutting it short. And then kind of through this process, like I began to realize also, like sometimes it would be uncomfortable if I was pushing. Like it'd be an uncomfortable process that took effort and took push and took force, right? And I realized I can do that, or if I just sit, I can let it happen and my body does it. And it's actually also very pleasurable. Like when your body is like healthy and having healthy processes, it's so pleasurable to take a shit. It feels so nice. And I know you know that. And if you don't, probably you've been forcing your shits. Okay. And so I'm going to invite you to try it this way. But okay, so we've got this this second way or this other way of taking a shit where you just relax, and your body does the entire thing. Like, seriously, I don't know if you guys have tried this. Your body does the entire thing on its own, and you don't have to push at all. Like, at all. If you just literally relax and wait, it'll do the whole thing on its own. But you can override it and push. And what I found is that when you don't, firstly, I don't end up getting hemorrhoids, which I might if I am like pushing my shits out. And you also get a more complete shit if you just keep waiting, and you just keep waiting for the whole thing to do its thing and happen. And this is such a brilliant illustration of the creative process and how you can come at it, because you can take over, push, force, and control, or you can surrender, receive, and actually let the greater intelligence do its thing, and do it in a way so much better, and that leads to just so much more than if you take over and control it yourself, and you take on that you have to do everything yourself. So when you're creating, like you're creating new offers, you're building out your business, creating whatever in your life, like when you take on that it's all on you, and you have to figure out and take every step yourself that's going to take you to that end result, you separate yourself, let's say, from the universe, from life. Like, you put yourself into a state of separation. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the idea, basically, that we can, be in separation, identified with our egos and our sense of separateness from the world. And that's when we feel like we have to do every single little thing ourselves, and take every step ourselves in order to get to the end result. Or, we can connect with our oneness and our wholeness, and actually our connection to life, to the world, to each other, to all things through all time and space. And we can create from that. And when we create from that and we're connected to that, that is the function. Being connected and creating from that is a function of receiving, is a function of creating with the feminine as well. And and it connects us to a sense of wholeness and a sense of connection, where we can receive the support from the universe, from this greater intelligence that's constantly bringing things together. If you let yourself receive, when you must control, you're not receiving, you're doing it all yourself. When you don't need to control, you have your end result, you know where you want to go, you know what matters and what you want to create, but you just, you don't need to control it, and you just do your part. For example, with my wrist, proper nutrition, enough calories, immobilize it for a certain period of time so that the process isn't disturbed. I've now moved into the next phase where I am doing certain exercises to strengthen the stabilizing muscles, but I'm not putting my wrist in unstable positions where then it can still damage the fragile tissue. So you do your part. It's not like you do nothing. You don't just fucking sit on the bed and loll about in lingerie all day like some feminine proposing coaches might suggest. You do your part. But you do your part. You do your part. And your part is not to know how it happens. It's not to know how it all comes together. It's to know where you want to go, assume it's coming together, and that there is more at play that you couldn't even possibly fucking comprehend or anticipate right now. You couldn't anticipate it. You can only do your part. And so you just show up and do your part, and you let the universe do the rest. So for example, creating a business, you show up and do your part. You don't have to know how you're going to pop off or get seen by more people or whatever, but you have to do your part, and you show up. And there's more to it, obviously. I talk about your turn on, being in that. Your turned on energy is your most open and receptive state that you are also meeting and matching with the follow through, right? But you don't know, and you don't need to know. You follow the breadcrumbs. You don't need to know how. You don't try to control it. When I first got back to Bali and I was like, right, I need to find a new place to move into. So I don't know how I'm going to find it. I could have gone into bulldoze mode, but I was like, okay, what do I know? What's my part I can play right now? All right, I've got these couple of Facebook groups where properties are posted. I'm going to look through those properties, and I'm going to do something that actually I don't like doing that much on an egoic level, but is just obvious to do my part and, put out there so that I can receive. I'm going to also actually post in these groups that I'm looking and what I'm looking for. And so I posted in the groups as well. And then like 6 people messaged me from that and sent me all these options. And 2 of them looked really good. I went to go and see them the next day. And then this is one that I took. And guys, this is a fucking dream. Like this is, in terms of right now in my life, this is perfect. I wouldn't want anything other than this. It's actually kind of funny because I thought like my ultimate villa in Bali would be bigger than this. And I think at some point it might be, but after moving in here, I'm like, I'm in a 2-bedroom villa. I'm like, this is the perfect size for me, right? I don't want anything bigger or flashier. Like this is perfect. And, in my mind, like to my ego, finding a place, like I didn't know where I moved out of was so beautiful and amazing. I was like, how could I possibly match that? And in my price range as well, in my budget. Like how can I not downgrade from that? And on an egoic level, I had stress around that. And everything that I was seeing when I would search the Facebook groups, there's not much around. There's nothing that's kind of a new build and quality and aesthetic that I like, because all of those places are rented on Airbnb for way more. And like, I see those kinds of places in Canggu. There's nothing like that around Ubud. I also wanted to be in this very specific area. Guys, I got it all. I got it all. I got this 2-bedroom villa with the most incredible views. I find it even more beautiful and expansive than my last house. I didn't think that was possible. My rent is actually the same price as my other house. Like I'm paying pretty much exactly the same. Some things are different, so I can't like compare it exactly, as in like I have one clean included here, but I don't pay for the Wi-Fi, but I do pay for other things. But essentially, it's actually exactly the same price. And it's brand new. It's gorgeous. It's so well built. They've put really nice furniture in it. It's the aesthetic that I wanted. And it's like, I couldn't have controlled this into existence. There's a part you can't do. And I'm sure you can bring to mind things you've created where you're like, I couldn't have forced that. Like something had to come to me and meet me at some point. And usually it's something you couldn't have anticipated it. Like, because you can't plan for it when you create with the greater intelligence, when you create with life, when you create with the universe, you can't know. You just can't. You can just do your part and, and things come together magically. Like things will come in at some point and you just got to be open, receiving and ready for that, and not trying to manipulate and control it, not trying to manipulate and control your outcome. As soon as you try to manipulate and control your outcome, you're not open and receiving. And so my wrist fracture was just is, because it's still healing, just such an illustration of that. You can't know. You can only do your part. And when you come at creation that way, you create, like, this is how you create magically. This is how things come together beyond what you could have even expected. Because you don't, in your self-conscious self, you don't even know what's best for you. You don't even know what's in store. You don't even know what's there in the background. And actually, half the time, you're not even seeing what's literally right in front of you until you shift your consciousness and you open up and you receive. This happens to me all the time with coaching clients, all the time, literally. They might come onto a session or come into a mastermind call feeling like, oh, I feel stuck and things aren't really like flowing or working for me and I don't know where to go next. And then we'll go through some kind of process where I will get them out of that, it's only me's separate energy, consciousness, vibration, perspective, and crack them back open to, to their wholeness and their connection and their turn on. And then suddenly they're like, literally the thing is in front of their face and they're like, oh yeah, I can do this. Oh yeah, I forgot. Like actually 3 people already offered me that, or, this person already wanted to write me up in their magazine, or actually I do have someone that wants these custom orders, or like I have a place where I can run these things. Just these things pop out that are literally already right in front of you, already right in front of your face. If you let yourself receive, there is a greater intelligence at play that you get to co-create with. And when you co-create with that, you get to create in line with your feminine. You get to, like, you don't have to push, you don't have to force, like taking a shit. You just get to let it happen. You just got to go to the toilet, sit down, relax, and it'll do its thing. That's the like things you need to do in that context. Different contexts, there's different requirements. You just need to do your part and let it happen. Let it come together. Let go of your vice grip. But you must go to the toilet. You must sit on the toilet and you must relax and let go so that your sphincter can actually open. Like Lena's just walking past me. Luckily she doesn't understand much English. Even if she did, it would be fine. So that's what I wanted to share with you on this episode. And I just want to, I could go on, but I think that's it. And then it's just for you to be with that. Just be with that and contemplate that for yourself and contemplate, where am I like grabbing on and trying to control and bulldozing and trying to force and manipulate an outcome because I think it's all on me. And, I've got to stress and anxiously bring about this end result. And what if I assumed, what if I held in my awareness that there's a greater intelligence that knows and that knows? I don't know. I don't fucking understand how that works at all. But I can work with it by just doing my part and being open and receptive and not needing to know how. And not needing to understand the process. You know what? I didn't have to go and even educate myself very much on how a bone heals. I did it to the extent that I was like, but I didn't need to do this, but, it helped optimize the result. I think probably like how, what nutritionally can I do that's going to support it? But I didn't look up how does the bone, I don't know, what are they? They're not particles really, a more macro thing. How does the bone structure, like building blocks, build on top of each other and then solidify into I haven't looked up any of that because I don't need to. I don't need to know. I just need to do my part and that's it. And you get to do the same with creating, and creating gets to be more magical, more profound, more easeful, deeply nourishing to your heart, soul, and spirit. When you acknowledge that and you realize you are not the dog wagging the tail. You're the tail being wagged, and you can't wag. You are the tail, and you can't wag the dog. You're being wagged, and so you receive. You be open. And actually, I'm going to do another episode on that because as I'm finishing this episode, I feel like, I can anticipate where I feel like people are going to get stuck next. So I'm going to do another episode where actually I dive into more what that actually means and how that practically looks in how you operate in life and how you approach and meet things. One thing that I hope you guys appreciate and enjoy about me, because this is just part of my genius. Like, I'm not saying I'm not comparing myself to other people, but like part of my genius is the way that I bring through information is like helping you understand these concepts, but how they practically translate, and you can't, okay, you can't understand everything in the logical way that you try to understand everything, but I can help land how this practically translates in how you approach life and approach creation and approach things not going your way or going your way. Like, how does this actually translate so that, so that these things, that I talk about can land for you, because they have to land for you. You don't just intellectually understand them. You intellectually hear them, and then I try to illustrate them so you can see them, and then they will land for you. And probably you've already experienced that kind of thing in the learning process. So I will do another episode that I think is more, how does that look? What is that like to receive and work in this co-creation and not overpower and take control and bulldoze? So that's going to be coming in another episode. I'm going to wrap this one up here. I hope you enjoyed this episode. The next episode, do you know what? I just wrote down 2 themes for these podcasts right now that I'm recording. Oh no, okay, this was part of the one theme. All right, because I just looked at my next dot point because I was like, what is the next episode that I'm recording? Because I'm planning to do it right now. And it says, what it looks like to let go of control. That's what I was just saying I'm going to record an episode on. I'm actually not feeling like this is going to be the next one necessarily that I record like right now. But I am going to record another episode right now, and I'm sure it's going to be hot. That is what I wanted to create one on. So I will see you over the next episode. I hope you enjoyed this. And if you did, if there's any major things that landed for you from it, I would love to ask for you to firstly share it with anyone that you think might also get a lot from it, to just really help this get out there. I think I bring a really practical lens to this kind of work and a really grounded, authentic way at coming at this work. And I want to get that out there because I actually think that the really fluffy approach to manifestation causes a lot of harm to people, and so does the really masculine bulldozing approach. So if you also agree with that and you find my podcast really supportive, I'd love for you to share it and just help get it out to more women or more people. I know there's guys that listen to my episodes and find them equally helpful, which is very valid, very true. And the other thing is that, if there's something that you got from this, I always love to hear about it, and I find it very motivating. I just got a message from someone a couple of days ago that they listened to the last episode and what they got from it, and it just made me, yes, okay, come on, let's do some more. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got a lot from it. Would love to hear from you. Would love for you to share it. Also rate and review wherever you're listening to this. If you do love this podcast and you'd love to support it, it's one of the ways you can do it. And I'm going to see you in the next episode. Lots of love.